Sahara.
Hi viewers, welcome back. Once again, my name is Adeola Fayon, and with me here is Rudolph Okonkwo. And we also have Fungai Maboreke in the house. He just read that wonderful and amazing poem about the Independence Day in Zimbabwe. Okay, Fungai, that was really deep. First of all, thank you. It was an excellent job.
Thank you.
Where did that, you wrote that?
Well, those are feelings. They're my feelings, and that's how I express them. And also my assessment of what's really going on over there. So whatever I put down on that paper was basically the way I felt about all the different aspects of what's going on in Zimbabwe, 35 years after independence.
It's interesting that today, because of what's going on in South Africa, we essentially forgot that Zimbabwe is marking their 35th year as an independent nation. You wrote here that you were talking about professionals. Our professionals, the workers, the youths, continue to immigrate, packing interrupted dreams, stacking corrupted schemes as they drove in droves migrate for greener pastures are fair. Now, so the situation in Zimbabwe is so there, and we know that they are the primary, one of the major victims of what's going on in South Africa today. Have you heard from people, your people, do you have people in South Africa? Have you heard from them?
In fact, we've been getting, since last week, Thursday, my phone has been ringing, and I've been receiving WhatsApp messages and pictures, some of them very graphic and gruesome, on the atrocities that are being applied to Zimbabwean people. And apparently it seems that the South Africans are obviously not happy to see all these foreigners come into their country and take over the jobs. And Zimbabweans have been so destitute for a long time, and they've actually sacrificed a lot. Some have crossed the border through the Limpopo River, going in crocodile-infested rivers. Some have made it, some have not. And then once they get across, they take a job and work. So basically, they've really been so desperate that they'll do anything. So of course, there've been a few that are involved in criminality, which is a common factor, but it's not justification of what's been going on.
So, but I hear a lot of people saying, oh, foreigners, they will come to South Africa, they will take over. I have a problem understanding that word, take over. I have never been to South Africa. I don't know if you have, Rudolph, but I know you have lived in South Africa. Is it that foreigners are the ones doing all the jobs that you would envy, and people of South Africa are just not? I mean, what's this takeover thing that they're...
Zimbabweans are resilient, but at the same time, they've been destitute. I think destitute is the right word, because there are so many highly educated people in Zimbabwe, but they have to earn a living. So many companies are closing down, have closed down. There are no longer any investors coming into Zimbabwe, so people are leaving. Those able-bodied people are leaving. And the best place to go is South Africa, across the border to Zambia, to Botswana, but mostly Botswana and South Africa if they cannot make it to the United States or England or New Zealand or Australia. So when they get there, they find any job in a restaurant as a waiter.
And these are educated people?
These are educated people from the University of Zimbabwe with degrees.
Let me ask you about your president. He made a statement that is being quoted all over social media. I don't know if you've seen it. What do you think about that?
This is about...
You can paraphrase the statement for those that may not know.
Well, it says that South Africans are busy attacking statues, but they cannot even slap a white person, and then also they're attacking their own fellow black brothers. But then I really don't feel like he said it, because I've been trying to find out where he could have said it. Okay. But of course, he has that reputation in the past. In fact, he was in South Africa a day before these xenophobic attacks happened, where he was out there, begging for money because Zimbabwe is bankrupt. So he's been trying to find somebody to loan Zimbabwe some money to meet their budget. But then I'm not too sure if he particularly said that, but there's been a lot of, strangely enough, support even in South Africa, where some of the journalists that attended this event, that he was there, he was supposed to speak for 10 minutes, like the host, the President Zuma, but he ended up speaking 6 times longer. And he was cracking jokes, and most of his jokes were involved with attacking the West, which has been part of, and then also preaching the Pan-Africanist statement, which is not necessarily nice to the white people. So when it comes to black and black, I don't know if he can stand for that. I really don't know if he could stand for that. So he might have said it because he's obviously not happy about the attacks.
But you know, one thing that I always wonder is how Zimbabwe used to be. I don't know if you can tell us maybe the glory days, if that's if there's anything like that, because you know, in the last decade or so, all the news from Zimbabwe are very depressing. What was it like before, now that the banks are bankrupt and stuff
Zimbabwe
like that?
was the breadbasket of Africa, as they say, and that is true.
The breadbasket.
Yeah, I mean, we used to grow our own, you know, food, anything. So in fact, other African nations relied on the exports from Zimbabwe. So you'd find that sometime in the 80s, things just started to go downhill, and in an effort to maintain power, Mugabe was almost entrenching himself, you know, and not intending to leave. So that's when we got that economic structural adjustment program towards the end of the 80s. And then come the 90s, he needed to extend more time, and then he decided at that point to then talk about the land reform program, so he decided to take over the farms. And now Zimbabweans are not experienced farmers. They did not know how to farm. We had, obviously, white Zimbabweans who were experienced. I mean, over decades, they'd been doing it. So after these farms were handed out, mostly to anybody who supported the ZANU-PF regime, which was the government of the day, they would get these farms, very big farms, which they didn't know what to do with. So as a result, we have not been able to sustain our economy through farming. So the shift is now moved now where we have everything, we have the land, but we cannot use it.
Hold that thought. I believe we have a caller. Caller, you're live. Okay, I think we lost that caller. So you were saying there was a time that we had plenty of food in Zimbabwe, and right. you have great infrastructure, by the way, in Zimbabwe, because I still see some of the buildings. So there was a time that the roads were good, electricity was stable, and all that.
The electricity is terrible at this point. I believe it's getting much better, but it's been terrible for years, where, you know, people would get electricity once a week, sometimes others, if you're lucky, twice a week, depending on what location. But the water system was totally out in most places, and the water from the tap was not deemed safe to drink. So people had to either drill boreholes or, you know, buy bottled water and having to resort to boiling water and everything like that. So people are still going through that kind of lifestyle to this day.
Let me, before we let you go, let me ask you this. In the 80s, during the Independence Day, Bob Marley was there, and he sang this song called Zimbabwe, where he said that every man has got a right to decide his own destiny, and that in the judgment there is no partiality. And I want to know, when you listen to that song, what do you feel, knowing the reality of what happened 30-something years ago?
Before you answer that, because I want to hear that, let's take this call quickly. We have a caller, and then we'll just come to the song by Bob Marley. Suleiman, you're live on SaharaTV. Please go ahead. Hello? Suleiman? Okay, we lost Suleiman. Please tell us about that song.
That song was very prophetic, and I believe Bob Marley wrote that song, obviously, specifically for Zimbabwe's independence. And at that time, you would think Zimbabwe was one of the few last countries in Africa to be liberated before South Africa. So the hype was very big, and the words of the song are ring true, but very ironic to today's government, because at that time they were referring to the Smith regime, which was a white government under the British rule. And so now we have a black government, but the words to that song stand exactly true, that every man has got the right to appoint his own destiny. So I wonder what Mugabe and his cronies feel when they hear that song.
All right.
Anyway, but before we let you go, I wanted to ask you about our question of the day, and a lot of viewers have been responding on our social media platforms. And it is, how should Africans respond to South Africa's xenophobia problem? First of all, is there a xenophobia problem in South Africa? Would you say this is like a problem, not just a one-time thing?
I think there is a xenophobic problem, but then again, South Africa is a traumatized nation through those hardships, through apartheid.
Is that an excuse?
It's not an excuse, but I think it's a fact, because apartheid dehumanized people. And if you lived under that system where you were just reduced to a pass, which was a number, and where the blacks were not good enough for anything, that would traumatize a nation. So they're still 20 years from ending apartheid. I think South Africa is still going through that. And you must also pay attention that South Africa has got a lot of tribes. So they have a lot of tribal pride, where because of apartheid, they were forced into these Bantustans where a Zulu, the Xhosa, the Pedi, the Shangans had to live together, use the same tap. So if a Shangan child attacks the other one, it's a fight, because these are warriors. They believed in defending their own. So fast forward, with all that mentality and all that apartheid, South Africans are still trying to recover from that trauma of having to be forced into a place. They were proud. If it was Zululand, it would be the Zulus. But because they were forced into these coexisting, they're still trying very much, and they look, first of all, according to tribal lines, and then, of course, if you are then from another country, you have no chance, you see, so they are trying.
What do you have to say?
No, I wanted to say that, all you just said, most of these people who are doing the killings, I don't think they actually experienced apartheid. They are very young people. Mandela came out, they got independence about 20 years ago. So this, I don't, but I understand the psychological impact of what happened.
It's a culture of killing, and they've just been it's been passed down to them, because people, you have to also look at the way people are being chopped up and killed and burned. Necklacing and burning of people was something that was practiced, so it's nothing strange. It's just that today it has a new name. Instead of xenophobia, they're calling it Afrophobia, because it's now the fear of your own. They still have Greeks and Indians and Asians in South Africa, and also those Boers that perpetrated this apartheid against them, and they don't burn them up like that.
And just before we move on, I just wanted to remind our viewers that they should make sure that they call in. The number to call is on the screen, and I believe we have a caller right now. Caller, you're live. Please go ahead. Hello. Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. Please go ahead. And please turn down your live stream. We can hear ourselves. Turn it down so that we can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yeah. First and foremost, I want to thank you, Sahara reporters, for really bringing most of all these things to the limelight for the whole world to see. Actually, in respect of what is going on in South Africa, I feel as an African, South Africa has gone out of track by taking such laws into their hands without having that public relation, that international relationship with other countries. though the government has spoken outright against this, but what I expected is an outright and a strong statement from UN. Because what is happening, if Nigerians should react the same way they are reacting now, I wonder the kind of world we are going to be living in. With the crisis going on, like Boko Haram in Nigeria, other fights in other countries, then South Africa are taking it upon themselves to do this to other African countries. I wonder the kind of relationship, the international relationship they are trying to foster, which is not good. That's why I'm saying Sahara reporters have done very well by bringing this into the limelight. But for their president just to come out making such a statement that no, we need something very stringent from them.
Right,
very stringent from them.
Sorry, I have to cut you off so that we can take out our callers, but thank you so much. And Rudolph, I was actually asking you as well how you think other Africans should react to what's going on. I'm so glad that they're playing a video of what's going on. That's the reality on ground. Right now, thousands of other Africans are now refugees in South Africa. You can't even start to imagine what's going on. So how do you think that Africans should react to this, Rudolph?
I mean, there's so many levels of looking at what's going on. It's not just, I think it's a failure of the government in South Africa. We're seeing the aftermath of the failure of the government to take care of the black population 20 years after. It's unfortunate that the other Africans who are there are now bearing the brunt of what has been going on with the failure of the government. So it's not just because if they had been taken care of, and then there are signs. This is not the first time that this happened, and I don't think they are putting systems or things in place to make sure it doesn't happen.
Okay, so is it that people are not being taken care of, or there are foreigners who are willing to go extra mile to? I mean, Funga, I would like to hear what you have to say about this as well. Sometimes I've heard that there are instances where the natives may feel like, oh, this job is below me, and a foreigner will take that kind of job and work their way up, or a foreigner will come into the country, go to school till they get their PhD and qualify for better positions. So is this about not taking care of people, or instances of some people not wanting to, do the job?
I think I'll attribute that to the leadership that South Africa is been going through with, because right now we have the current president who would rather enrich himself, in using public funds. So already you can see a big shift from the priorities that had been set. And then also, I think it's also a lack of, a clear-cut structure on what they intended to do. Nelson Mandela, when he came in, he was concerned about nation building, but he was building a very broken nation where the values of education, and all those other issues were just non-existent. So he spent the 5 years that he was in office trying to rebuild a broken nation, and that he managed to do to a certain degree. I mean, it was the most difficult part where people can then forgive and forget the ghosts of
Sorry,
yesterday.
I have to interrupt you and take this call. We have another caller. Caller, you're live. Please go ahead. Hi. Please go ahead, Buki.
Hello?
Hi.
Hi, my name is Shonibale from the Bring Back Our Girls campaign, Abuja, Nigeria.
Thank you.
However, I'm connecting with you from Sudan. I'd like to contribute to say that the abduction of the Chibok girls, the fact that it has festered, it's been allowed to fester for a year, should send a strong message to us as a people. A message that young girls, vulnerable members of our society could be taken for that long, and till now they are not yet back. It puts to question what we define as security. It puts to question what we define as value for human life. It puts to question our shared humanity. And it is important for us at this point to rise up as a world of people who are concerned about a situation like this, because this is not a Nigerian problem. This is a problem of the human race. This is a problem of our shared humanity. It is not about the fact that Chibok girls were abducted, but it is about the fact that girls who are human beings, vulnerable members of our world, have been taken. So in moving forward, I would like to say that we need to revise this conversation. We need to bring this issue back on the front burner. The same way it was during the first few weeks of the Bring Back Our Girls campaign, when the hit was 4 million. This is not just about hashtag Bring Back Our Girls. This is not just about going on social media. This is not just about carrying a placard. This is about taking constructive and strategic action that is result-based, that will ensure that we have these girls back. So in the last 1 year, we've not achieved success. When we bring this issue back on the front burner, on our conversation table, we should analyze where did we go wrong. We should analyze how did we miss it, at what point did we miss it, what are the gaps that currently exist, and what must we do in order to make sure that we don't commemorate another 1 month.
Exactly.
Right now, we're talking about 1 year plus 4 days. It will be a shame, again, for us to commemorate another milestone day of these girls being in abduction. It is not just about, the fact that these girls, look at it. Bring Back Our Girls was trending on April the 14th. April the 15th is no longer trended. It's nobody is talking about it any longer, and that is what has happened.
Right.
So we need to acknowledge the fact that we have failed these children, but we cannot keep failing them. We need to keep talking about this issue until the right kind of action is taken. Everybody has reclined back into their cocoon, and we will just be talking about it, and we will just say, oh, girls were abducted. But what is being done to make sure that these girls
make sure that we bring them back?
So
thank you so much, Ms. Buki. We so much appreciate your call, and especially your passion in passing this this information. And I'm not sure if you guys were able to watch the panel segment we had earlier about these girls, the fact that it's been a year. And, I'm just hoping that the Nigerian government would, if they can just find the girls before they hand over office, it would be really, really good. And if they don't, if the new government comes in, hopefully they can find the girls in the first week or two. That would be a great part of their resume. But I know that we're running out of time, and I wanted to read some of our comments from our question of the day. First of all, if they can put up the question of the day, which is how should Africans respond to South Africa's xenophobia problem. Now, I want to read the very first comment, which I want to hear your opinion about. And the very first comment is from Abdul Mujid Bayo Adebolajo. Now, it's very long. I'm just going to read part of it. He said that, are we not guilty of the same device among ourselves? He said, certainly stiff action should be taken against South Africa, but we should shun hypocrisy. He's trying to say that we're hypocrites. Hypocrisy is when you try to justify and applaud the bigoted and racist comments of the Oba of Lagos and other bigots like him, suggesting that Igbos in Lagos should be thrown into the lagoon, and then you point fingers at South Africans. You're posting their videos, their pictures, you're commenting on your wall. Okay, so what do you guys think about that? He's basically saying that, this is happening even in our countries as well.
Yeah,
so.
I think we have failed to put the whole thing in context when you look at Africa. Across Africa, you have jungle justice happening every day. People are just killed because they are suspected of stealing something.
Or
you burn them, or witchcraft, you burn them. So now, because in South Africa, I was just looking at the names and the numbers of victims. The people that died in South Africa is about 6 as of this morning in the whole news, and it's all over the world. But if you think about Boko Haram, how many people died at Boko Haram? How many people died even in Nigeria every month from people who are lynched on the streets? They don't make the news around the world. So there are so many things that I think Africa is a continent of many stories, and there are a lot of unfinished businesses in Africa, and this is one of them. Unfinished business in Africa. So we are dealing with the aftermath of that, I think.
Yeah, I think we have another caller. Let's take that call quickly. But I totally agree with that person that wrote the fact that, we are just, because this is happening in South Africa, it's happening amongst us too. Caller, you're live. Welcome to SaharaTV. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, please go ahead.
Yeah. I want to make my contribution. My contribution is that at this point, it is should
What's
be
your
escalated to
name?
the level of Africa.
What's your name?
Yeah, my name is Robert.
Robert.
Yeah, my name is Robert.
And you're calling from where?
I'm calling from Lagos. I'm a lawyer.
Oh, great. Go ahead.
Yeah, my contribution is that at this point, it should be escalated to the level where African Union can sit, and discuss this xenophobia killing in South Africa, to the extent that first they should be talking about compensation, for the family of anybody that is diseased. I mean, adequate compensation to be determined at that level, so that criminals, don't benefit from their crime. And those who are actually injured or who have suffered death, their family can be adequately compensated. And I believe that at that level, a timeline should be given to South Africa to actually, other than clamping down on the looters, the criminals, who have taken the laws into their hands, then we should also talk about compensation. When a timeline should be given to them, then if on that timeline, which is 1 month from now, my contribution is that then, the world and especially Africa should come out, you understand, to stand against, South Africa at that level, at governmental level. Because the point is, if government doesn't do anything, then they leave the people, the people in different countries to actually, come out to do things for themselves. And that will be like repeating what is happening in South Africa. Because South Africa, I learned that, a good percentage of their income comes from foreign investment, even in other countries.
Thank you so much, Robert.
Foreign investment. Yeah, all right then.
What do you guys think about what he's saying, though? Thank you, by the way, Robert.
I mean,
the AU.
I like the way when it comes to South Africa, we want this standard, this high standard. But we have never talked about compensation in Nigeria for people who suffer from actions like this. But the big thing is to put it in the context. The first email you read about the king above Lagos.
Yeah.
The context of this incident is the king of Zulu, and I don't know, Fungai. What did he say, and is that what triggered this, or is this something else?
There's, like I was saying earlier, I said South Africans are very tribalistic, so they have a king, Goodwill Zwelithini for the Zulus. So, like I said, they're very proud people. They have their own kingdom within the South African, enclosure. So he came out. I mean, in the past, he's been known to be one, hard-hitting character in terms of what he says, but recently he was calling for, like foreigners must leave, and attributing the reasons being that they're coming up with small-time businesses, selling cheap clothes all over the place with no proper infrastructure or design, and also attributing that they're the criminals. But then South Africa has always had a high criminal rate when South Africans themselves. But then there's been an influx of Nigerians who have been known for drug trafficking and stuff like that. And then people from all over, even Zimbabweans that are prostituting themselves out of this desperate situation. So it's not the majority of the people, but it's just a small minority group that is dealing drugs and doing all these kind of things. So he gave that blanket statement, and because of his influence, he also got the backing from
I actually listened to that statement. I listened to what he said.
President Zuma's son, who said, yes, these foreigners must go. Yeah. So before long, they'd set a date and said on that date, we're going to go and attack these
So they
businesses.
actually set a date? Because when I listened to what the Zulu King said, I felt like, sometimes when when some leaders speak without really thinking about the weight of what they're saying, that's how I felt when I listened to it. I didn't know that they actually sat down and set a date to attack foreigners.
So it's been happening even they have what you call these minibuses where foreigners would come and start owning. So, people have zones that this foreigner cannot just come into this
see.
space. So they go and burn those buses. I mean, it's something that has been happening, but this was very organized.
Okay.
It was very calculated, and the message was clear because this is what they wanted the people
All right,
to
I
see.
think we have another caller. Caller, you're live. Please go ahead.
Hello.
Hi.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Is that Adiola?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm calling to thank you for the good work you have been doing and the message and the news you have been linking us today
Thank
to
you.
the entire continent. Yeah, and and I want to contribute on the issue on South Africa. And first, I want to wish Zimbabwe a happy Independence Day and perhaps Africa also. And what is happening in South Africa is unfortunate. Honestly, the problem has much to do with the apartheid or the acceptance of a bad leadership and the skew mentality and acceptance of apartheid by their leaders, including the late Nelson Mandela. This is the second or the third time this thing has happened. And the earlier the African Union put pressure on South Africa to do something about it, the better. They can't be killing human beings and terrorizing us like that because we are in their country. I suggest some kind of education or civic education about the history of South Africa, the struggle, and the path the entire continent took to bring South Africa this far.
Thank you so much.
Maybe that will help. Maybe that will help them understand the value of Africans.
I see.
This time.
What do you guys think, though? Do AU has to be involved before we can get anything done?
I think it's easy for us to say other African countries contributed to the struggle against apartheid.
Okay.
That's true. But that doesn't mean anything for a poor South African black person who feels isolated from the economic boom of their country. That it's difficult thing to just say and expect them to relax. But we have to understand that this issue is not just South African issue. All across the world, where you have a country and you have people going into that country to make a living, people always revolt. Even in America here, there are a lot of people who are not happy with where the Latinos are coming into America and getting jobs. It's the same story. In Britain, the European Union, they all deal with that. So immigration is a common thing. The question is, what is the government of each country doing to make their people feel secured, even though people are coming into their country? If you think about it, we may be talking about South Africa today, but I think in years to come, if care is not taken, we may be talking about Ghana tomorrow with Nigerians in Ghana. So these flashpoints are all over the world, not just Africa.
I see.
So it's about how countries manage it. If things go bad, like in Nigeria, there was a time things were bad in Nigeria in the 80s. Nigeria deported Ghanaians. And if that had not taken place, it could have maybe lead to something like violence that we're seeing. So it's a common thing. The question is, how do we deal with that individually as a country? And once you have a depressed population within that country, they can react in a way that might surprise you.
I'm trying to reason with what you're saying, even with Boko Haram, because it looks like wherever there's poverty, because Boko Haram's issue, a lot of the people that they've been recruiting are unemployed. So, but I guess my problem now is I'm trying to understand that mentality. At the same time, I'm trying to understand why violence should be the option. There's a video that I'm sure they would play very soon. They played some of it earlier about, it's the video of this South African woman explaining why foreigners should leave. And she was talking about how she had no job. She had 2 kids, and now they have no jobs, And she was specifically talking about Nigerians leaving South Africa. She kept saying Nigeria. So they're going to play that video in a minute. But before they play it, the next comment ties with what you just said. And it's from Oluwafemi Idowu, if they can please put that up. And he said that it was first the black South Africans fighting for survival in their land in shackles of Western colonial masters, and that the rest of Africa did not rest until South Africa was liberated from apartheid and all other form of white supremacy up to the stage where Madiba became free. Now, you're saying that the fact that other Africans they rallied around South Africa at the time doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah, for the people who are doing this. Remember, the elite, the black elite in South Africa, they don't they don't have problems with people coming to help them. In fact, they are the ones recruiting highly skilled Africans to come and take up positions, since they are trying to have black faces in Africa. But beyond that, for the poor people who are dislocated within their country, who feel that they are not connected, they are left behind, they don't see all this idealism that you're talking about the African ideal. They have not gone outside South Africa. They don't know, and they don't care, because all they care about is that they are not being taken care of by their own country, and they look for who to blame.
But should it matter, though, that other Africans rallied around them during apartheid?
They feel let down because
by other Africans?
By their own government, because there have been so many promises, and you must know that taking this liberation from apartheid to a free South Africa, there were so many promises that were being made in the Freedom Charter that South Africa had drawn, where there was going to be equality and all that. And certain aspects of them have been achieved, but Soweto still remains Soweto today, complete with all its, sewages and people living in shacks. And this is 20 years after. So the expectations have been high. The expectations have been coming in slow, and some have just been non-existent. So it's an explosive situation where people feel deprived, people feel like there's no end to this, there's no end to this misery. So
let's watch this video of a South African woman talking about why she wants all foreigners to leave. So that was not the actual video. Before this video, because I have not introduced the video of Julius Malema, if they can please play the video of the South African woman. They played it earlier, a little bit of it. The South African woman talking about why foreigners should leave. And they played it earlier. Let me know as soon as you have it queued up. But right after that, I want you guys to know that Julius Malema did something that a lot of Africans have been admiring. And I think they have that video. Let's watch the woman first and we'll be right back.
Ingani najela angidayisi tomatoes angidayisi lutho ngizele ngidayisi ukhona balele aqhuma mina ngaqhumela ubala zonke lezi ingane ngakhipha la kimi asebenzi zonke lezi ingane asebenzi sofuna mama wena ufuna kwenzekeni manje ngifuna ukuthi manje la ahambe kubo ahamba namanye njela waye kubo lezi ingane zangu zithola umsebenzi ingane zami ingane zami asebenzi ngenqala amanajele yenu.
Thank you so much. So I want to see your reaction to that.
Well, I'm not surprised. I mean, whenever you look at it, this is not a representation of South Africa. It's just one woman. And maybe there are many like her, but they are mainly people at the lowest level in the country. If you come to America and look at the people at the lowest level, they will tell you they want all these Latinos to go back. There are still people who are saying that all black people in America should go back to Africa.
Wow.
So it's not
and
something.
Latinos will become the highest population very soon.
It's not an unusual thing. So.
And then for that woman to classify and say these Nigerians, I'm trying to figure out if she actually knows if they're Nigerians, because they have a name for foreigners. They call them makwere-kwere, because what they
what
hear
does that mean?
Is kwere-kwere, like that's the sound they hear of their languages that they're not
familiar.
like
languages.
So, yeah, so they call everybody inclusive from Zimbabwe, Zambia, Malawi, Botswana, Nigeria, makwere-kwere. So which is a name, derogatory, but it's a name that they classify. So from the way I see the video, I'm not too sure if she understands or knows for a fact that they are Nigerian, but maybe because there's a tag where if it's something they hate, they'll just classify and say Nigerians.
Yeah, I mean, Nigeria gets the bad rap across across the world, not just in Africa, because we have the numbers, and if you go to South Africa, I believe you have more Nigerians amongst the immigrants there. So, but that doesn't mean that this is a representation of the views of all South Africans or most South Africans. I think it's a question of how do we manage as people immigrating, deciding to go to these countries, and especially South Africa, because if you look at Africa, there's no other country that I think that attracts people the way South Africa does. And that's a failure on the part of Africa, that if you don't want to live in your country for whatever reason, you don't really have much option than to find your way towards South Africa. And South Africa, they have to have a policy to manage that. You don't, in any country, there's no country that will have people coming in large numbers that won't have that kind of destabilizing impact on their population.
And South Africa also has the resources to handle a large influx of migrants to their country, and there's also so many jobs in that sense that people can come, because there has to be a pull and push factor. So the pull factor is there. You cannot deny that. So that's why that you see people going there to seek opportunities, and somehow they find somewhere where they can, make a living.
Yeah.
All right. So right after this happened, Julius Malema made a statement on the floor of the parliament that everybody has been talking about. It's a bit long. It's about 4 minutes video, but I want us to play it so that people can hear it. He accused the president of not being able to control his own house because, like you said, apparently the president's son supports the fact that either you drive them out or you kill them. And, people got to know about that. So a lot of people have been criticizing Mr. Zulu that he's not been firm enough in terms of ensuring peace and stability. And you guys have been talking about the failure of this government. And I just want us to watch how Julius Malema talked to the president about this, and then we'll talk about that. So I'm sure they have the video. If we can please watch it. It's about 4 minutes long. So we apologize for the technical difficulties, technical issues. It was not supposed to be music. It was actually Julius Malema yabbing Mr. President, so to say, and he was right there, and he told him basically that you have failed. You've not been able to control your household. Your son is part of the reason why other Africans are being attacked. So he's basically attacking Mr. President, saying that the fact that he couldn't control his household tells us why he's not been able to control the country. Now, I wish that you guys were able to hear his audio, because he was not nice at all. He was very frank, and you have seen the video.
I've seen the video, and I've actually been watching this is not the first time Julius Malema is dressed down, the president of South Africa, in Parliament. And to a point, I think sometime towards the end of last year, the president stopped coming to Parliament, and then the House was begging him to say he needs to come back. And then the House begged Julius Malema of the EFF.
And then how did you feel when you watched that video?
It's been something that has been coming, and I feel a sense of democracy at work, because it's not many African countries where you can see such a dress down by a member of parliament to the leader of the country.
Or for someone to talk to the president like that. I was so happy when I saw it. But then at the same time, it feels as if Jacob Zuma himself, the president, has allowed this kind of behavior, because Julius Malema was just a kid when he was inducted into the ANC, and they raised him. So at one point when he decided to become vocal, they expelled him from the party. So it's like the cock has come home to roost. So when he was talking to the president about these same issues, he was addressing the lack of control over the killings, over the craziness, and also saying that your body language even today is not showing signs that you are interested to deal with this. All right, please hold that thought. We have a new caller. Caller, you're live. Please go ahead. Hi, David. Hello?
Yeah, hello.
Hi, please go ahead.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, please, I can be. Yeah, hello. Yola.
Hi, please turn down your live stream because we can hear ourselves, and you're live. You can go ahead any moment.
Thank you very much. I can be hearing you. Sorry about the louding. And please, the problem, I think Rudolph has cleared the problem. Precaution is better than cure. If every country can be able to make their citizens be okay a little bit in Africa through their leaders, things will be better. But what are they doing in AU meeting? Are they doing as African leaders? If they can't be the neighboring country, they can't do what is right for their citizens. When the problem comes to that very country, the neighboring countries are the ones to solve the issues. And this is exactly what is happening. When the Zimbabwe and Nigerian, when their leaders cannot be able to do the rightful things to their citizens, when the problem, assuming the past election in Nigeria tend to war, what do you think it will happen to the neighboring countries? They are the ones to suffer for it.
Thank you so much.
If they can't stand as a leaders to do all these things, this thing will still continue to happen all over the world.
Thank you so much. I guess my last question for the two of you is, in terms of being practical in what has to be put in place for something like this to not continue to happen in South Africa and to not happen in other African countries. Now, not just, take care of the poor people, but I know that here in the U.S., they have what they call the social security number. They have the green card, like something that for you to get it, it's, they make it difficult for foreigners to get it, that when you're a citizen, it comes with some rights. Is that, ideal? Is that advisable?
I don't think that has ever stopped people from coming through. I mean, people have been
not from coming through, but, from foreigners coming in and taking over, if I should use that word. Well,
right now, I think America is going through these kind of changes where now they're starting to apply these kind of system in the latest immigration reform, where the person employing the undocumented immigrant gets a fine. The fines are high. So, talking of South Africa, I mean, it's been almost like a thoroughfare. They have borders and everything, but Zimbabweans have been going underneath the fence. They've been swimming.
Under the fence?
Yeah, there's what you call the Limpopo River that channels from the Zambezi River, and it's crocodile and hippo infested, and people have been crossing through those infested rivers. There are people that wait to cross these people.
Wow.
And then there's also corrupt customs officials that look aside when the money is exchanged. So I think the story is not really how, but it's about to change the mentality of the people themselves and how, because if you're going to have corrupt people, they're still going to find their way. So
what about you, Rudolph?
Yeah, I think when you were talking about people coming in, you can't really stop people from coming in. America has not been able to do that. I don't think South Africa will be able to do that.
No, I'm not saying they should stop people from coming in. I'm saying what we can do to prevent, instead of just saying, oh, take care of the poor, like some things that needs to be put in place so that the people, the citizens won't feel left out.
Yeah, I mean, that's the job of the government. They will figure out what their citizens need and try to educate people. And
I feel like you're being vague. I want, like, you know, like the red.
No, you talked about social security and stuff like that. They have things like that, not to the extent that they have in America. But even in America, where they do, people still complain about immigrants that are coming in. The issue is that in America, there's space for people. There are some places that black people will come in or Latinos will come in, white people will move away, go to another place and leave. But in South Africa, they don't have anywhere to go. So they have to confront those people. People are coming into their community, are setting up businesses, and they are not doing well. It's a classic issue that is across the world. There's no space in South Africa to say for the immigrants. And what you may see is that after many years, let's say 10 years from now, the immigrants that are there now will move away from the poor black neighborhood. As they get more money and start doing better, they will move to where the rich people, where they don't really care whether you're white or black, they could mix and leave the poor black people to still remain in their poor neighborhood. So it's an issue that is social in nature, and every country is struggling to deal with that. There is no country that has mastered it that is a way you can say this is perfect. But the key thing is that the South African government failed their own people, the poor people in South Africa, and we are all seeing the consequences of that failure. All
right, so I'm rounding up, but I just want to read more of the the comments on Facebook. Especially one that I want you guys to talk about before we close. And this one is from BC Osindero, if they can please put it up. And he's saying that boycott South African businesses. This is how Africans should respond to the xenophobic attack going on. Boycott MTN, DSTV, local supermarket. I mean, ShopRite. Go for local supermarket instead of ShopRite, and so on. They must definitely come to their knees. Let's do it. So when you read something like this,
I know there are people who are pushing this, and there are people who are saying, oh, we can't do that because these are not really South African companies, because there are a lot of Nigerian investors in these companies, and the people that work for these companies are Nigerians. All across Africa, in Zambia, they're also talking about the same thing, to boycott. And the issue is, I think anything people can do will help. If the businesses in South Africa can force the government to do more for the black community, the poor black communities, that will help. So if by saying that you're boycotting the businesses here, it will force those businesses to do something in their home country, that might help. I think there should be action from all fronts. It's not one side that will solve the problem. So
yeah, I guess that's been a sentiment. Like even in Zimbabwe, people are already gathering, making up meetings to boycott. So I don't know how successful this is going to be. But I know in Mozambique, for instance, South African trucks trying to get through have been stopped by like multitudes of 400 people saying you cannot come through, turn around, we're going to burn your truck, we're going to burn. So I think when people see those images of violent killings, they're not happy. So I've been seeing the general feeling of that.
Hold that, Fungai, because it ties to my last question for you, and it's the tweet, the number 5 tweet from Prince Mofon-Wolu Shonibare, and he says retaliation is the solution. Fire for fire, tit for tat.
Okay, of course, that's not the...
No, that wouldn't.
But you're already saying that some South African trucks...
Right. But I guess that's not the right way to go about it, because there are no winners, as we are saying. Everybody's a loser at the end of the day, so...
But should people just watch what's going on?
Well, in fact, as we speak, South African foreigners that are there have armed themselves. I've been receiving WhatsApp messages, people saying we've got guns. They're all on the streets and armed.
Let's say one of the other things that is going on is watching the leadership in Africa, not just South Africa. It's been going on for more than 4 days now, but there has not been any concrete and organized reaction by the leaders in Africa.
Right.
You know, that's the problem. It's not
What
just
kind of
about the
action
people.
do you
So,
want?
for instance, there should be an emergency summit by whether they call it
Mugabe,
AU.
there's AU and Mugabe is
AU
the
and South
chairperson,
African
yeah.
Organization of States. There should be a movement showing
But they're
that the
all
political.
upset because their citizens are in South
No,
Africa.
yeah, I know. But this should come from them, and they should approach Zuma and say, okay, we have to take action.
Mugabe is actually the chairperson of SADC and also the chairperson of the AU. And he was in South Africa the day before this.
Some Africans
started.
have closed their borders to
So
South Africa.
I think everybody is still waiting to find out what his resolutions are. But then again, he also has issues within his own country where people go missing and
all right, guys.
Yeah,
demonstrations.
basically, we are expecting people like Jonathan to lead.
Oh,
No, I'm just saying. I mean, he wants to hand over quickly, and you are telling him that
I feel
something's
like
happening
he's
in
busy
South Africa.
right now. His mind is not in South Africa. He has a lot on his plate.
So
he has to prepare his home in
That's the
Ethiopia.
problem.
So, anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining us for this callback segment. We didn't have too many callers, but thank you to everybody that called in. And we're hoping that this will stop. It's been going on for weeks now, you know. Hopefully it will stop. I see that some South Africans, some of them are marching, you know, for the foreigners, saying that they don't want this thing to continue. That's a good thing. But beyond the marching, I hope they would, you know, actually stand with them and you know, protect them and all that. All right, viewers, that has been our callback segment today based on the Xenophobia that are going on in South Africa. Stay tuned. We have much more to come, especially the Skype segment with Rudolph Okonkwo, and we'll be right back.